On the final stretch towards elections in Honduras, the country's armed forces distribute the electoral material across all departments. Cuba commemorates with a march this Saturday 150 years of the execution of 8 medical students at the hands of the Spanish colonialism that prevailed in the largest of the Antilles. Several people in Lebanon in the Social Affairs Ministry protesting against the economic and social crisis the country experiences. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Diego Martin, your news anchor. From the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. Stay with us. Honduras is on the eve of important elections. The country's armed forces confirmed that distribution of electoral material throughout the nation will be completed this Saturday. The handing out will finish in the capital of the Central American country. The Armed Forces spokesman, Lieutenant Jose Coelho, assured that electoral suitcases distribution has been completed with no failures reported. The official explained during last hours 2,919 of those had been delivered in La Paz, Choluteca, and Valle, having as pending places Francisco Morazán, Tegucigalpa, and Comayagüela, to which 3,412 suitcases will be sent. Following legal rules, the Armed Forces handled transportation, custody, and security of electoral material before, during, and after the elections. Honduras National Police began its deployment to guarantee all needed security measures for the elections development this Sunday, November 28th. National Police spokesman Edgardo Barahona explained how an extensive security plan organized with the National Electoral Council advances to guarantee the process to develop in peace and calm. According to Barahona, both the National Police and Armed Forces will guard the access to educational centers fitted as polling stations during the voting on November 28th. He also highlighted the plan meets biosecurity measures required by the country's health authorities.
On November 28th, we will also provide protection to those people who arrive to exercise their vote, as established by law, maintaining those 200 meters distance among voting tables, thus supporting the access of people arriving to the voting centers so that they do it in an orderly and safe way, especially considering that our plan also integrates this new normal of 2021 of coexistence with the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, we are also requesting the implementation of biosecurity measures.
The director of the National Police in Honduras, Alexis Gallo, assured that the armed forces, which have been singled out for their role against the demonstrations denouncing electoral fraud, have been prepared and trained to guarantee the development of the elections.
We have been firm and constant in the electoral race, directing actions of dissuasion and risk prevention prior to election day. In this context, in the National Police, we have prepared ourselves by first analyzing the lessons learned from other recent processes, updating our action protocols, especially those that allow us the use of force, training our personnel in the role we have as National Police in the electoral process.
And the Honduran Air Force General Commander Tito Livio Moreno Coelho expressed the country's armed forces' commitment to protect the right of the citizens.
We proclaim all our professionalism based on ethical and moral principles, as well as patriotic and institutional values, in order to fulfill this new mission of safeguarding individual rights, constitutional guarantees, human rights, and other rights of every Honduran citizen following the law, so people may attend in peace and calm to exercise their right to elect and be elected. This electoral process must be an inspiring civic celebration for our country, the region, and the world. We acknowledge the activities of international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other actors of international community that are accompanying us as observers of this process.
Honduras is a few hours away from Elections Day. The United States government asked citizens for respect and patience regarding the results of November 28th. On its Twitter account, the Embassy of the United States in Honduras asked the Central American country's citizens for calm and to accept official results. The National Electoral Council explained it will disclose a vote breakdown according to Honduras's law. Over 5 million voters of the 9.5 million inhabitants are fit to exercise their right to elect their political representatives. In the turnout, the Organization of American States will participate as an observer, as well as the European Union and Honduras's civil society organizations. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, this Friday highlighted the work of the state's Center for the Control of Pharmaceuticals, Equipment and Medical Devices, SECMED, in an act of recognition for its results in the fight against COVID-19. The president highlighted the seriousness, the alerts, and demands of the institution, which allowed the Caribbean island not only to have 3 vaccines certified against the disease, but also to be among the most immunized countries in the world. In the capital's Convention Palace, Cuba's Ministry of Public Health awarded SECMED with a special recognition for its dedication in the fight against COVID-19. The National Union of Health Workers, the Federation of Cuban Women, and the Committees for the Defense of the Revolution also received their scientific awards.
I would like to express our recognition, our gratitude, and our congratulations for everything you have achieved. You have always worked, and above all, you have defended the accuracy and demands in all the processes related to the certification of clinical trials, drugs, and protocols. We also know what you have done, how you have had to multiply in these times with that seriousness that saves, so that all the procedures, all the treatments, and the new vaccines that have been developed in the country could go through, and the major intervention that was the vaccination campaign.
Cuba commemorates with March Saturday 150 years of the execution of 8 medical students at the hands of Spanish colonialism that prevailed in the largest of the West Indies. Accompanied by President Miguel Diaz-Canel, groups of students parade from the steps of the University of Havana to the Esplanada of La Punta, where the monument to the 8 medical students is located. On November 23, 1871, 45 first-year medical students toured the capital's Espada Cemetery, where they were imprisoned and court-martialed twice after being accused of profaning the grave of a Spanish journalist who defended colonialism. 8 of them were indicted as punishment and chosen at random, being condemned immediately to death by firing squad. In the central speech of the act, the member of the University Student Federation for Ideological and Political Work, Maureen Valdez, reminded the rejection of the Cuban people in face of injustices and blockades.
Let us always condemn the injustices, the blockades, the imperialist clause that they are calm. Let us march. Let us fight to defend the honor of those who are neither forgotten nor dead. Let us remember Fidel, our Fidel, who at the grave of the students of the 71 declared, "We come before the dead, who died for the homeland, although they are not here because of the homeland wants them. We come before them because they will never be forgotten, because they were the ones who established with their sacrifice a national consciousness. May the national consciousness guide us. May the national consciousness allow us to continue building a Cuba that lives and is reborn. Let us forget the empty sadness. Let us march in the name of the 8,000 who gave their lives for Cuba."
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In Bolivia, as part of the so-called Patriotic March in support of President Luis Arce on his 5th day of mobilization, residents are expected to travel 45 kilometers. This march intends to reach the city of La Paz to demonstrate its support for the Bolivian president and democracy, threatened as they claim by a new coup d'etat in preparation. The march is led by the social organizations of the 9 departments of Bolivia and continues to advance despite the low temperatures and rain. Along the route, the population of the neighboring communities has joined the mobilization to strengthen it. On a note of the Mexican government's decision to grant visas to thousands of migrants, 3 new caravans have left Tapachula in the last hours trying to advance to Mexico City, where they could receive documents that would regulate their migratory status. According to media reports, 3 groups of migrants totaling up to around 2,000 crossers conformed the 7th migrant caravan of 2021. The National Institute of Migration reiterated it will continue with the mobilizations in buses, but also organize the travelers to carry on with their regulation procedures. Mexico has detected over 190,000 undocumented crossers from January to September, near 3 times as much of those registered in 2020. Mexico has detected also more than 190,000 undocumented immigrants from January to September, nearly triple the number in 2020, and has deported nearly 74,000 according to the Migration Status, the policy unit of the country's Secretariat of Governorship. The Dominican Republic hosted the first meeting of Ibero-American foreign ministers on Friday, where the agenda of the 28th Ibero-American Summit of Heads of State and Government was defined, which will be held next year. Delegations from 22 countries participated in the meeting where they discussed post-pandemic recovery and proposals and initiatives aimed at strengthening multilateralism, democracy, and the people's well-being. The region's foreign ministers also debated initiatives recently proposed by the heads of finance to address economic crises and debts, as well as those discussed at the ministerial meetings on health and culture.
The Dominican government considers as a priority the creation of innovative financial instruments to facilitate the transition to this new development model that has been outlined in the documents of recent Ibero-American summits.
Washington and Taipei defied Beijing with a new meeting between representatives of the United States and the self-proclaimed Taiwanese government. A committee of Republican and Democrat lawmakers from the United States visited Taiwan to meet with the leader of the self-proclaimed government, Tsai Ing-wen, on Friday morning, with the purpose of reinforcing the United States strategy of strengthening the special administrative region's relations with Beijing. The meet occurred a few weeks after a group of 6 Republican officials visited the island, and is the third made by Congress people from the United States this year so far.
This is only the 3rd congressional delegation from the United States Congress to travel to Taiwan this year. But I am hopeful with the progress we've made together in overcoming the COVID-19 pandemic that frequent travel to Taiwan by U.S. policymakers will become business as usual again.
Polls reveal that support for United States President Joe Biden is falling, with only 43% approval of his administration. This is the lowest approval rating the president has recorded since he took office on January 20th of this year. The figures come as the Biden administration seeks to solve problems related to rising food and gasoline prices in the country. Meanwhile, studies published by the country's Labor Department revealed that inflation increased by 6.2% over a 12-month period of time. The French government stated its disposition to discuss the autonomy of the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe. French Minister from Outer Seas Dependencies Sébastien Lecornu announced that the elected officials of Guadeloupe proposed discussing the island's autonomy and stated the willingness of Paris to address the subject as long as it helps solve the problems on the island. This declaration comes after the protests in the island prompted by COVID-19 regulations, as well as other issues in the territory such as the high cost of living and low salaries, unemployment, and mistrust in the French government's policies. The island has undergone several attempts at autonomy since the Second World War, with the inconformity of its residents who affirm they are constantly treated like second-class citizens by the French authorities. Hundreds of Cyprus activists protest against construction in untouched Akamas Peninsula. Activists have taken to the streets of the capital Nicosia and demonstrated in front of several government buildings to protest for construction projects in the Akamas Peninsula, a largely unspoiled coastal area situated on the western point of the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, and home to one of the few sea turtle nesting areas in the region. Protesters ask the entire Akamas Peninsula designated as a national park, biosphere reserve, or protected area with the corresponding international protection regime, the demolition of illegal structures, and the restoration of environmental damage. We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Several people in Lebanon intruded in the Social Affairs Ministry protesting against the economic and social crisis the country experiences. The demonstrators expressed their full-out disagreement towards the policies carried out by the government. They consider the life conditions and the rise in basic good prices to be unbearable. Fuel and certain medicines have been made inaccessible to many citizens, while the drop of the Lebanese pound is at 25,100 per dollar, with a huge impact on the ruin of the nation's purchasing power. Military authorities informed Saturday that the Federal Army of Ethiopia picked up several victories in the conflict against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, taking control of the high ground surrounding the city of Badi in Amdara and in other areas. Last Tuesday, the Eastern African country's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed committed himself to leading the army from the front lines in action that, according to the government sources, boosted morale among soldiers. The federal government of Ethiopia resorted initially to negotiations, but the premier's office declared that the rebel side shut down any nonviolent resolution to the conflict. The Tigray region has been a scenario for a gruesome armed conflict that has aggravated the living conditions of all of the area's inhabitants. The Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention held a topping-out ceremony on Friday to mark the structural completion of the main building of the organization's future headquarters in a southern suburb of Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. The project, featuring modern offices, high-end laboratories, and other facilities, is being constructed on 9 hectares of land with a total building area of 23,570 square meters. Supported by funding from China, the new headquarters are expected to be completed in just over 2 years. Upon its completion, the Africa CDC headquarters will further improve the continent's ability to control and prevent the spread of diseases, enhance Africa's public health system, and benefit the local people. Since 2020, China has provided 53 African countries and the African Union with 120 batches of test kits, protective suits, masks, shields and goggles, ventilators, and other emergency supplies. China also dispatched medical teams to 17 African countries to fight against the pandemic.
Role is disease control, disease prevention. So when you suspect something, you need to be able at least to identify what is the problem. So this building, these facilities, let me say, will offer us this opportunity. So it means a lot.
And on COVID-related news, alarms are raising all over the new Omicron variant of the COVID-19 pandemic. More than 10 countries decided to impose travel restrictions to incoming flights from other nations where the new strain has been detected. The variant, recently identified, seems to be spreading quickly over the south of Africa and was found in Hong Kong, Botswana, Belgium, and Israel, stirring up concern in the scientific community due to the unusually high number of mutations that can make it more contagious and result in lack of immunological adaptability. For this reason, on Friday, countries like Brazil, United States, Italy, Austria, France, Germany, and Japan decided to limit or straight up shut down the flights coming in from some of the sub-Saharan nations, as well as Canada, United Kingdom, Singapore, Netherlands, Malta, Malaysia, Morocco, Dubai, Jordan, and the Philippines. At least 61 passengers in 2 flights from South Africa tested positive for COVID-19 after their arrival in Amsterdam. They are currently under the evaluation of health specialists in the capital of the Netherlands in order to determine if they are affected by the Omicron strain. In a communique, Dutch health authorities explained that 61 of the tests turned out positive while 531 are negative. So virus carriers were put in isolation in a hotel nearby the airport after remaining in the aircraft for hours. Should these travelers not bear any symptoms, they would stay no longer than 5 days in the accommodations. Otherwise, they will remain there a minimum of 7 days. Those who tested negative are to be quarantined in their homes. United Kingdom's Health Secretary Sajid Javid confirmed 2 cases of the new coronavirus variant Omicron in the United Kingdom on Saturday. One case is in Chelmsford and the other is in Nottingham. However, Javid said the 2 individuals are linked.
4 more countries to the red list from 4 a.m. on Sunday, and those are Angola, Mozambique, Malawi and Zambia. If anyone has travelled to these 4 countries or any of the other recently red-listed countries in the last 10 days, then they must self-isolate and take PCR tests. And also, later today, the Prime Minister will be holding a press conference with the Chief Scientific Advisor to the government and the Chief Medical Officer to set out further measures. And lastly, this is a real reminder to us all that this pandemic is far from over. And if there's one thing that everyone can be doing right now is, if they're eligible, please take your vaccine, whether it's your first shot, your second shot, or your booster jab. If you're eligible, please take it.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Dio Martin. Thanks for watching.